We're going to do the sort of grandmother of all finance questions and actually work at a pension plan or a retirement plan, depending on what you want to call it. Now, the idea of a pension plan is that you put in tiny amounts of money over your working life until you end up with a large sum in an account. And then once you retire and you don't have employment income coming in, you start chipping away at that large amount over a certain amount of time. So it takes some planning. And if you think about that, there's two pieces to it. There's the piece where you have to build up. So that would be a future value because I'm trying to get to a large sum of money. That equation looked like this. And then there's the part where you take the large sum of money and you chip away from it until it's gone. That would be a present value. This formula looks like this. Okay, so we're going to need some details. All right, so question number 1. How old are you now? Well, suppose you are 16 now. Okay. Now, suppose you are going to retire at age 60. Now, this is always fun. For all of you out there who are not 16, I apologize for all these examples being about 16-year-olds, but this video was specifically written for grade 11s in Ontario. So that's how old you are when you're in grade 11 here. Okay, now here's the grim question. How long do you think you're going to live? Well, in Canada right now, I think the average life expectancy is 84. Lots of people live past that, and you don't want to run out of money when you're 87. So let's say you plan to live to 100 years old. I've met somebody who's over 100, so it's not impossible. And if you happen to go before that, well, I guess your kids can inherit your pension plan. So it's a win-win there, or someone gets it anyway. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that this part, the build-up phase, from 16 to 60, that's 44 years. And the tear-down phase, where you're living off that money, from 60 to 100, is 40 years. Okay. So let's talk about the build-up phase. Well, actually, I think that's backwards. Let's figure this out, because I think what's easier is to figure out how much money you think you need to live, and then find out how much you'd have to have saved up to do that, and then figure out what your payments would have to be in order to build up to that money. So let's start at the end. Suppose you need $3,000 a month to live. And you've got your eye on some sort of investment plan that you're up here for when you get to this stage that is not too risky but pays pretty well. So I'm going to put that in as, let's make up a number, something that will be safe, has a lower interest rate generally, So let's go with 5.4%. Okay, so my I factor, 5.4% is 5.4 divided by 100, which is 0.054. Talking about taking it out monthly, so that's going to be a monthly compounding period. And 0.054 divided by 12 gives me 0.0045. Okay. Now, I plan to live on that for 40 years. So my N is 40 years of monthly withdrawals. That's 480 withdrawals. Okay, so I have enough information now to figure this out because I know how much I'm pulling out. That's $3,000. I have my I factor, it's 0.0045. And I know that I'm drawing on it for 480 months. So what would the present value of that particular investment be? Well, it's 3,000 divided by 0.0045. 1 subtract 1.0045 to the exponent negative 480. Now I just skipped a step there and added the plus 1 just to save some space. So 3,000 divided by 0.0045 gives me, oh, that's a scary number, $666,666.67. 1.0045 to the exponent negative 480 gives you 0.1158852814. Subtract that from 1. Gives me 0.8841147186. For grand total of $589,000, $589,409.82. Okay. So in order to draw $3,000 from the account every month at that interest rate for 40 years, I'm going to have to start with $589,409.82. So that's what this costs. Well, that's on your 60th birthday, though. So when you're 60, if you have that amount of money in that account, you're going to be able to do this for 40 years. And it should get you to your 100th birthday. All right, now, obvious problem. Who has $589,000 kicking around? Probably no one. Which is where you have your time advantage, because you've got 44 years in order to save up that money. So I'm going to clear this off here. And I'm going to try and figure out how much money I actually have to put in every month in order to build up to that value. What was that? It was $3,000 a month. Before I forget the details, for 40 years at 5.4%. Okay, now the build-up side, because you are not trying to live off that money, so you don't need something safe, you need something a little more aggressive to grow your funds up in the first place. Let's suppose you find a fund that you're happy with that pays, let's go with 8.4% per annum. And you're going to make bi-weekly payments. So just for reference, if you buy a Canadian bank stock, they pay about 2.5% in dividends every quarter-ish. So 2 to 2.5 multiplied by 4 quarters gives you something in the 8 to 10% range. So that's not a crazy percentage. So I'm looking at a future value now because I don't have this chunk yet. I'm just 16 and I want to build up to that. So I'm using the build up equation here. I don't know what the payments are going to be. I can crack the I value, and I know that N will be 44 years of biweekly payments. So if I can just figure out the numbers for I and N, I should be able to figure out what my payment needs to be to build up to that. So I value, 8.4% is 8.4 divided by 100. This gives you 0.084. And bi-weekly payments means every other week. That's how most people get paid, most people I know anyway. So if there are 52 weeks in a year and you only get paid on every other one, half of 52 is 26 bi-weekly periods. So I'm going to have to take my 0.084, I'm going to have to divide it by 26, see what I get there. Gives me 0.03230769231. Oh, no, 0.0 that. There we go. And if I have 44 years to do it, every other week, 44 multiplied by 26 gives me 1,144 payments. Okay, so I need $589,000.82. I don't know the payments, but I do have this I factor. That's obnoxious. The I factor here, I'm just going to add the 1 to save myself a step. To the exponent 1144, subtract 1. I'll be writing on my face here. You don't want this in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply this by this. So $589,409.82 multiplied by 0.0032307699231 gives me 1904.24711. 1.0032307699231 to the exponent 1144 gives me 40.04654358. Now that's the money right there. The fact that this number is so big because this interest rate is so big and because you put it in there so long, that's going to help you keep your payment down. I'll just subtract 1 here, so 1904.24711 is P times 39.04654358. So my payment will be this number divided by that number. $1904.24711 gives me $48.77. Okay, so what is the lesson here? If you happen to be 16 and you happen to be responsible enough to realize that someday you don't want to have to go to work every day, and that you're going to need some money in order to live, if you can go and take a look at what investment plans are paying out, take a conservative estimate for what percentage you think you might be able to get on your investments, erase this number so it's not in the middle of your face, you can calculate the amount of money you'd have to have sitting in your investment at whatever age you want to retire to make that happen. And once you know how much money you need to have sitting in that account, you can go look for a maybe optimistic percentage that you think you can earn on an investment plan to figure out how big of a payment you'd have to make in order to build up to that by the age you want to retire. And after all that calculation, I've spat out about $49. So at a reasonable rate, I mean, this is a bit high, but it's not crazy. If you were able to put $50 off of every single paycheck you get for your full working life from 16 to 65, which, by the way, that's early retirement. That's 5 years before your Canada pension kicks in. You will have accrued enough money in that account to live off of it for another 40 years. Now, if you think about that, you worked almost as long as you're retired for. So with a little bit of creativity here, and maybe sort of changing the conditions, like maybe you think 100 is a little presumptuous. Maybe you think $3,000 is not enough. Maybe you think $3,000 is too much. I know you sort of play with the numbers. You can sort of get an idea of how much money you're going to have to put away. Now the net, right, like the world doesn't give you accounts that stay at that percent for this amount of time. The market goes up, market goes down, you sort of play around with it. But you could get an idea of approximately how much money you'd put away. So your retirement, like a 40-year retirement at $3,000 a month, costs you about $50 off of every paycheck. Okay. So net, I knew how much money I wanted to get out, and I had an interest rate and an amount of time I wanted to live. Let me get the sum that I had to have sitting in my investment to do that. Copy and paste that into my future value, knowing a potentially different interest rate and a different number of payments. Calculate how much that's going to cost you. So I think that's it. I don't want to do another example because I think you've got the idea. So you're just going to head to the practice problems and see what you can do.